We've explored the man-made labyrinths beneath our cities and the concrete bunkers of the Cold War. Storm drains where people vanish. Nuclear silos frozen in time. Narco tunnels carved by greed. But the oldest underground traps weren't built by architects. They were carved by greed of a different kind. Welcome to video 5 of our Subterranean World series. Tonight, we are leaving the pavement behind. We are heading into the deserts of the West and the deep woods of the Appalachians. Here, thousands of abandoned mines and natural caverns sit open, waiting. These are the black lung graves, places where the earth itself is the weapon. For a killer, an abandoned mine shaft is the perfect place to make a body disappear forever. Drop something down a 50-foot hole in the middle of nowhere, and it's gone. No grave to dig, no evidence to bury, just gravity and silence. For a hiker, a wrong turn in a cave is a death sentence. No GPS signal, no cell service, just darkness and the slow realization that you're lost in a place where no one will ever think to look. From the serial killers who mapped their graves in the desert to the viral mystery of the M cave that swallowed a man who got too curious, this is the underground at its most primal. These are 7 true stories of traps in the deep earth. The earth is full of holes. Mines dug by men who dreamed of gold and found only rock. Shafts sunk by prospectors who went home empty-handed. Caves carved by water over millions of years. Wells dug for water that never came. And all of them are waiting. Waiting for someone to fall. For someone to stumble into the dark. For someone who won't come back. The Map of Graves. San Joaquin County, California. 2012. A man sits on death row at San Quentin State Prison. His name is Wesley Shermantine. And he has a secret. Actually, he has dozens of secrets. Bodies. Locations. Crimes that were never solved. Victims whose families have been searching for decades. Waiting for answers that never came. For years, investigators have tried to get him to talk. Tried to get him to reveal where the bodies are buried. But Shermantine always refused. He enjoyed the power. The control. Knowing something that everyone wanted to know. Until now. In February 2012, he makes a deal. Not for freedom, he's never getting out. Not for a reduced sentence. He's already on death row, scheduled for execution. He makes a deal for money. $10,000. He tells his cellmate, a bounty hunter named Leonard Padilla, that he'll provide locations, exact coordinates, for a price. The money goes to Shermantine's family, his mother, and in exchange, he draws a map. Not of forests, not of vacant lots, not of shallow graves in remote fields. A map of wells and abandoned mine shafts. Wesley Shermantine and his partner Lauren Herzog were known as the Speed Freak Killers. The name came from their preferred drug, methamphetamine. They were addicts who terrorized San Joaquin County throughout the 1980s and 90s. They kidnapped, raped, and murdered victims, mostly young women, but also men and children. How many? No one knows for certain. Shermantine claimed the number was in the dozens, maybe more. He was vague, played games with investigators. More than I can count. Enough to fill a graveyard. He and Herzog were childhood friends, growing up together in rural California. Hunting, fishing, normal kids. Until the drugs, until the violence. They hunted together, but not animals. People, driving through rural areas at night, looking for victims. Someone hitchhiking, someone walking alone, someone vulnerable. Armed with Shermantine's map, investigators locate one of the sites. A small waterproof camera attached to a cable. The kind used for industrial inspections. Sewer lines. Pipes. Now being used to look for bodies. Slowly, they lower it into the shaft. One of the investigators holds a monitor, watching the feed. The camera descends past the opening. The walls are hand-dug. Rough earth and stone. You can see the pick marks. The shovel scrapes. Whoever dug this well over a century ago did it by hand. Foot by foot. Tree roots jut out at angles. Gnarled and black. Some are dead. Some are still alive. Still growing. Still drinking from the moisture at the bottom. Old bricks line parts of the wall. A collapsed lining from decades ago. Someone tried to reinforce it once, but the bricks have crumbled, fallen, leaving gaps. 20 feet down. 30. 40. The walls start to narrow. The shaft was dug wider at the top, narrowing as it goes deeper. Standard well construction. At 50 feet, the camera reaches the bottom. The image is grainy, green tinted from the night vision. At first, it's just debris, trash that's been thrown down over the years. Beer bottles, soda cans, a tire, plastic bags. The well has been used as a dump. But then, the camera shifts. The operator pans it slowly, and they see it. A shoe. Brown leather. Rotted. Then another shoe. Different. A sneaker. Fabric. Then bone. White against the dark earth. A femur. A skull. Clothing fragments. The well is a grave. Not just one body. Multiple bodies. Stacked at the bottom. Mixed with trash. Mixed with animal remains. Deer bones. Coyote bones. Impossible to tell how many without excavation. The forensic team makes the decision to excavate. But you can't just dig straight down 50 feet. The shaft is unstable. The walls could collapse at any moment. They bring in heavy machinery. A backhoe. An excavator. They start digging around the well. Not down. Around. Creating a wider access point. Slowly exposing the shaft from the side. It takes days. The earth is dry and crumbles easily. It falls back into the hole as fast as they dig. They have to shore up the walls as they go. Reinforce with plywood and steel supports. Like mining in reverse. Finally they reach the bottom. And the work becomes delicate. No more machines. Just hands. Brushes. Screens to sift the dirt. A forensic anthropologist takes over. Every bone has to be documented, photographed, catalogued. They find bones. Human bones mixed with animal bones. A skull. Adult female. Fractured at the base. Bullet hole in the back. Small caliber. Probably a .22. Clothing fragments. A dress. Denim. A jacket. A purse. Leather. Rotted but intact. Inside, they find identification. A driver's license. The plastic is warped. The photo faded. But the name is still legible. Cindy van der Heijden. They find the remains of Cindy van der Heijden. A 16-year-old girl who disappeared in 1985. 27 years earlier. She was last seen walking home from a friend's house in Clements, California. It was a short walk. Maybe a mile. She never made it. Her family reported her missing immediately. The police investigated, but there were no leads. No witnesses. No evidence. She just vanished. Her mother spent 27 years searching. Never gave up hope. Never stopped believing she'd find out what happened. She died in 2010s. 2 years before Cindy was found. Never knowing. But it's not just Cindy. They find more remains at the bottom of that well. Another skull. Male. Bullet hole. More bones. More clothing. At least 3 other individuals in that well alone. Some identified. Some not. DNA is extracted. Sent to labs. Compared against missing persons databases. Some matches. Some still unknown. The excavation continues at the other locations on Shermantine's map. Another well on a different ranch. This one near Oakdale. The property has been abandoned for years. The house is falling apart. Windows broken. Roof caved in. The well is in the back, hidden behind a collapsed barn. This one is deeper. 70 feet. They lower the camera and find the same thing. Bones. Clothing. A body. They find the remains of Chevelle Chevy Wheeler, 19 years old when she vanished. Also, in 1985, she was friends with Cindy. They knew each other. Hung out in the same circles. Investigators now believe Shermantine and Herzog targeted that group, that social circle. Taking multiple victims from the same community. Chevy was last seen at a party she left with someone no one remembered, who the investigation went nowhere. Her mother spent years searching, died in 2008, never knowing what happened to her daughter. Each location reveals more victims. More families getting closure they never thought they'd receive. But also more horror. Because the scale of Shermantine's boneyard becomes clear. He and Herzog didn't just kill. They systematically disposed of bodies in a network of abandoned wells and mine shafts, locations they'd scouted in advance. Probably while hunting, while driving around the back roads, looking for isolated spots, places they knew no one would ever look, places where gravity did the burial for them. No digging, no physical evidence left at a burial site. Just drop the body down the hole, cover it with some brush, and walk away. Investigators estimate there are still more victims. Shermantine hinted at other locations he never revealed. Wells he forgot, or chose not to disclose. And San Joaquin County has hundreds of abandoned wells, thousands of old mine shafts. Searching them all would take years, decades, cost millions, resources that don't exist. So some families still wait, still wonder, still hope that maybe the next excavation will bring their loved one home. Loren Herzog never faced justice for his full role in the killings. He was initially convicted in 1999, sentenced to 78 years to life. But his conviction was overturned on appeal in 2004. A technicality, improper testimony. He was released in 2010, lived in a trailer in rural California, trying to stay under the radar. But everyone knew who he was. In 2012, just as Shermantine started talking and the bodies started surfacing, Herzog hanged himself in his trailer. January 16th. The same month Shermantine drew the map. Some say it was guilt. Others say he knew what was coming. That once the bodies started surfacing, the evidence would bury him. That he'd be arrested again. Tried again. And this time, there'd be no technicality to save him. Wesley Shermantine remains on death row at San Quentin. He's given several interviews over the years. Always with a smirk. Always playing games. When asked how many people he killed, he's vague. More than I can remember. Enough. Does it matter? When asked why he chose wells and mine shafts, he's more direct. They're perfect. You drop something down there, it's gone. No one's ever going to find it unless I tell them where to look. The earth just swallows it. It's like it never existed. And he's right. Without his map, those victims would still be down there, lost in the dark, forgotten, 50 feet below the surface while families searched for decades. The abandoned wells of California are still out there, on private property, hidden by brush and tumbleweeds. Some covered with rotting wood, some not covered at all, just black holes in the ground, waiting. And investigators know there are more bodies down there, somewhere. In wells Shermantine never revealed. In shafts Herzog took to his grave. In the deep earth. In the perfect graves that gravity built. The Rumor in the Rock. Newberry Springs, California. 2004. April Pitzer was looking for a fresh start. She was 36 years old. A mother. And she'd been through hard times. Abusive relationships that left scars. Financial struggles that never seemed to end. Legal troubles that followed her. But she was trying to turn things around. Trying to rebuild. She moved to Newberry Springs. A tiny, desolate community in the Mojave Desert. Population maybe 2,000. If you're generous with the count. It's the kind of place that barely qualifies as a town. More like a collection of trailers. A few houses. A gas station. A bar. Scattered across miles of desert. It's the kind of place people end up when they're running from something. Or when they have nowhere else to go. April got a job at a local bar. The kind of place with neon beer signs and a jukebox that only plays country. She started seeing someone new. A man named Jose Anaya. He had a reputation. Everyone in Newberry Springs knew who he was. He'd been in trouble before. Violence. Drugs. But April thought she could handle it. Thought maybe this time would be different. And for a while, things seemed okay. But on April 17th, 2004, April vanished. She was last seen leaving Jose's house around 11 p.m., getting into her car, a white Pontiac, driving away. And then, nothing. Her car was found the next day, abandoned on a dirt road about 5 miles from Jose's house. The road didn't lead anywhere, just into the desert. Keys still in the ignition. Purse inside with her wallet and ID. No signs of struggle. No blood. No broken windows. Just an empty car sitting in the desert heat. Her family reported her missing immediately. They knew something was wrong. April wouldn't just leave her car. Wouldn't disappear without telling anyone. The San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department opened an investigation. But leads were scarce. April had been living a transient lifestyle. Moving around. She knew a lot of people in Newberry Springs. Some of them dangerous. People involved in drugs. People with violent pasts. The investigation focused on Jose Anaya. He was the last person to see her. He had a criminal record. History of domestic violence. Prior assault charges. But he denied any involvement. Told investigators April left his house alive. Said they'd had an argument. Nothing serious. She got in her car and drove off. He went to bed. That was it. Said he had no idea what happened to her after that. Investigators pressed him. Brought him in for questioning multiple times. But his story never changed. And without a body, without physical evidence, without witnesses, the case stalled. And then the rumors started. Whispers in the community. People talking in bars. In parking lots. Saying they knew what happened. Saying April didn't just disappear. She was killed. And her body was dumped in the mines. Newberry Springs sits near Red Rock Canyon. An area absolutely riddled with abandoned mines. Gold mines. Silver mines. Copper mines. Exploratory shafts dug during the California mining boom of the 1800s. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. No one knows the exact number. Because many were never officially documented. Never registered. Just holes dug by prospectors hoping to strike it richy. When the gold ran out, when the silver dried up, they abandoned them. Left them open. Unmarked. Dangerous. Vertical shafts dropping 50, 60, 100 feet straight down. Horizontal tunnels extending into mountain seats. Caverns. Collapses. Sinkholes. The landscape is a minefield. The rumors said Jose killed April. Maybe during the argument. Maybe it got physical. Maybe it was intentional. Maybe it was an accident. But either way, she was dead. And he panicked. Took her body into Red Rock Canyon. And threw her down one of those shafts. The rumors were specific enough to prompt action. Volunteer search teams organized. Experienced cavers. Mine explorers. People who knew how to navigate the shafts safely. People who understood the risks. They started searching in the summer of 2004. Just weeks after April disappeared. But the task was overwhelming. Red Rock Canyon is vast. Miles of rugged terrain. Steep cliffs. Boulder fields. Flash flood channels. And the shafts are everywhere. Some are obvious. Marked by old headframes. Wooden structures built over the shaft opening. Most have collapsed. Rotted. Away. Just piles of wood. But they indicate a mine. Others have tailings piles. Piles of rock and dirt excavated from the shaft. Dumped nearby. Some are hiddens. Covered by brush. Camouflaged by rocks and sand. Just dark circles in the ground that you don't see until you're standing right next to them. And then you look down. And there's nothing. Just a black void. The search teams worked methodically. They had a grid system. Divided the area into sections. Each section may be a square mile. They'd work through one section completely before moving to the next. Marked each shaft they checked with spray paint. Orange X on a nearby rock. So they wouldn't check the same one twice. They'd approach a shaft carefully. Test the ground around it. Make sure the edges were stable. Rock around old mine shafts is notoriously unstable. Crumbles easily. You can be standing 3 feet from the edge. And suddenly the ground gives way. And you're falling. So they moved carefully. One person would rappel down. Full gear. Harness. Ropes secured to multiple anchor points. Helmet with a mounted light. Gloves. Descending into the unknown. Some shafts drop 10 feet. Hit a floor. Dead end. Others 50 feet. 100. Some had side tunnels at the bottom. Horizontal passages extending into the rock. Those were the most dangerous, because you couldn't see how far they went, couldn't tell if they were stable, could collapse at any moment. At the bottom, they'd search, looking for anything human. Clothing, bones, personal effects, a shoe, a purse, jewelry, anything that might indicate a body had been dumped there. Most shafts contain nothing but rock and trash, bottles thrown down by teenagers using the mines as party spots, old cans, tires, mattresses, animal remains, coyotes, deer, bighorn sheep that fell in and couldn't get out. But they kept searching, week after week, month after month. Volunteers taking time off work, driving out to the desert, risking their lives, because they believed April was down there, somewhere. One shaft nearly killed a searcher. His name was Mike, experienced caver. He'd done this dozens of times. He was 30 feet down when the rope anchor shifted. The rock it was tied to moved. Not much, just an inch. But it was enough. The rope went slack for a split second, then caught again. But in that split second, Mike dropped 5 feet, straight down. He slammed into the wall. His shoulder hit first, dislocated. The pain was immediate, blinding. He dangled there, 35 feet below the surface, shoulder useless, holding on with one arm. The team above pulled him out, slowly, carefully. It took 20 minutes, every movement agony. His shoulder was dislocated, 2 cracked ribs, severe bruising. He was back searching 2 weeks later, arm in a sling, because April was still missing, and someone had to look. The graffiti became clues. Old mining camps had been used as party spots for decades. Teenagers would drive out to the desert, bring beer, weed, music. They'd spray paint their names on the rocks. Chuck loves Anne, 1987. Class of 95 was here. Jesse Maria, forever. Some of the graffiti was newer. 2003, 24. Around the time April disappeared. The search teams documented everything. Took photos. Interviewed locals. Do you know who Chuck is? Do you know where the class of 95 hung out? Did you ever see Jose Anaya out here? Trying to piece together who used which areas. Who might have known about which shafts. Which ones were remote enough to dump a body. The investigation continued for years. Jose Anaya remained a person of interest. But he was never charged. Never arrested for April's disappearance. Without a body, prosecutors couldn't move forward. He was eventually arrested on unrelated charges in 2007. Domestic violence against a different girlfriend. Drug possession. Assault with a deadly weapon. He went to prison. Served 5 years. Never confessed. Never gave investigators anything. April's family never stopped searching. Her mother, Barbara, organized searches every year. On the anniversary of April's disappearance, she'd bring volunteers. Bring cadaver dogs when they could afford to rent them. The dogs would alert near certain shafts. Sitting. Barking. Indicating they smelled decomposition. But excavating the shafts was nearly impossible. Too deep. Too unstable. Too expensive. You can't just dig up a 100-foot mine shaft. You need equipment. Engineers. Structural support. It costs tens of thousands of dollars per shaft. Money the family didn't have. Money the county wouldn't spend on a case this old. In 2012, 8 years after April disappeared, there was a break. An inmate at Chuckawalla Valley State Prison came forward. Said his cellmate, a man named Carlos Ramirez, who'd been friends with Jose, had confessed. Said Carlos told him he'd helped dispose of April's body. That Jose had called him that night. That he needed help. Carlos drove out to Jose's house. April's body was in the back of Jose's truck. Already dead. They drove into Red Rock Canyon. Went to a mine shaft Carlos knew about. One he'd used before. And they threw her down. Then they drove her car out to a different location. Left it on the side of the road. And that was it. The informant provided details. Specific details. The location of the mine. Near a rock formation that looked like a sleeping giant. A shaft with an old rusted bucket near the entrance. Investigators returned to Red Rock Canyon. Focused on the area, the informant described. They found the rock formation. Found several shafts nearby. One had a rusted bucket. They brought in specialized equipment. A deep earth camera. Better than the one used in 2004. Ground-penetrating radar. They checked shaft after shaft and found nothing conclusive. One shaft showed what might be fabric, 70 feet down, but the walls were too unstable to excavate safely. An engineer assessed it. Said attempting to excavate would likely cause a collapse. Could kill the recovery team. Another shaft showed bone. 40 feet down. They managed to extract it, using a grappling hook on a cable. But it turned out to be animal. A deer that had fallen in. Maybe 10 years ago. The frustration was unbearable for April's family, knowing she was probably right there, somewhere beneath their feet. But the landscape refused to give her up. The desert kept its secret. To this day, April Pitzer has never been found in. The case remains open, unsolved. Her family still searches. Barbara is in her 70s now, still organizing searches, still hoping. But the mines of Red Rock Canyon number in the thousands, and searching them all is impossible. Some are flooded. Underground water has filled them. Some have collapsed entirely, sealed by cave-ins and rock falls. Some are so deep that reaching the bottom would require professional mining equipment and funding that doesn't exist. The rumor persists. People in Newberry Springs still talk about it. In the bar where April used to work, in the gas station, at the grocery store. They still say they know which shaft she's in. But rumors are cheap, and the desert is vast. April Pitzer is one of hundreds of people who've vanished in the California deserts. Some are found years later. Bones in the sand. Clothing caught on a Joshua tree. Most aren't. The Manson Mine. Chatsworth, California. 1969. The Manson family is infamous for the Tate LaBianca murders. Sharon Tate, 8.5 months pregnant. Stabbed 16 times. The word pig written in blood on the front door. It's one of the most notorious crimes in American history. But the Manson family's roots aren't in Hollywood mansions. They're in the dirt. In the caves and canyons of the Santa Susana Mountains. At a place called Spahn Ranch. An old movie set. A western town built for filming in the 1940s and 50s. Fake storefronts. Saloons with swinging doors. A jail. A stable. A hotel with windows that led to nothing. It was Hollywood magic. A facade. Built for cameras. For cowboys and gunfights that never really happened. By the late 60s, the movie business had moved on. Westerns weren't popular anymore. The ranch was falling apart. Paint peeling off in long strips. Wood rotting and splitting in the California sun. Dust settling over everything. The owner, George Spahn, was elderly and nearly blind. 80 years old. Living in a small house on the property. He couldn't maintain the place anymore. Couldn't afford to hire help. So when Charles Manson showed up in 1968 with his family, George let them stay. In exchange, the women took care of him. Cooked his meals. Cleaned his house. Kept him company. And Manson had what he needed. A base. Isolated. Remote. Miles from the nearest town. Perfect for what he was building. The ranch sat in rugged terrain at the base of the Santa Susana Mountains. Rocky hills rising steeply behind the buildings. Boulder fields. Narrow canyons cutting through the rock. And caves. Natural formations carved by erosion over thousands of years. Sandstone hollowed out by wind and water. Some were shallow alcoves. Others went deep into the hillside. 30, 40 feet back. And there were old mining tunnels. From gold prospecting days in the 1800s. Most had collapsed. Sealed by rock falls. But some were still accessible. Dark passages extending into the mountain. The family used these caves. For shelter when the weather turned. For storage of stolen goods and weapons. For drug use away from George's house. And for rituals. Manson used the isolation to cement his control. Out here, away from society, away from rules, he could create his own reality. His own religion. His own laws. He preached about helter-skelter. The coming race war. The apocalypse. And the caves became part of that mythology. Sacred spaces. Places where the outside world didn't exist. Where his word was absolute law. The family would gather in the caves at night. Bonfires casting shadows on the rock walls. Music. Drugs. Manson talking for hours. His voice echoing in the stone chambers. Building his vision. Building his control. One of the people who knew the family best during this time was a man named Donald Shorty Shea. He was a stuntman. A horse wrangler. He worked at Spawn Ranch helping with the horses and doing maintenance around the property. Shorty was in his mid-30s. Tough. Experienced. A career Hollywood stuntman who'd worked on dozens of westerns. He doubled for actors. Done horse falls. Staged fights. He knew the business. And he didn't like Manson. Didn't trust him. Thought he was dangerous. Thought the whole situation at the ranch was wrong. Young girls. Teenagers. Living with this man who controlled everything they did. Shorty saw the weapons. The stolen cars being chopped up. The drugs. And Shorty talked. He told people what he saw. Told ranch hands at neighboring properties. Told people in town. He said Manson was running some kind of cult. That something bad was going to happen. That someone should do something. Manson knew Shorty was talking. Knew he was a problem. The family was already paranoid after the Tate LaBianca murders in early August. They knew the heat was coming. Knew law enforcement was closing in. And Shorty was a loose end. Someone who'd seen too much. Someone who might talk to the police. On August 26, 1969, just weeks after the Tate LaBianca murders, Shorty disappeared. He was last seen at Spawn Ranch that morning. Working with the horses in the corral. Feeding them. Mucking out stalls. Several people saw him throughout the day. Then he was gone. His car was found abandoned a few days later. Parked on the side of a road near Canoga Park. Keys in the ignition. No blood. No signs of struggle. Just an empty car. Shorty's wife reported him missing. Police investigated. But there wasn't much to go on. Shorty was a transient worker. Moved around. Sometimes he'd disappear for days working on location shoots. At first, it didn't seem that unusual. But as days turned into weeks, people started talking. Rumors spread around the ranch and in the community. People said Manson had ordered Shorty killed. Said the family had taken care of him. That he'd been murdered. But where was the body? The story that emerged years later, pieced together from testimony, confessions, and plea deals, was brutal. Manson had ordered several family members to kill Shorty. Tex Watson, who'd been one of the main killers in the Tate LaBianca murders. Steve Grogan, a young family member nicknamed Clem. Bruce Davis, another core member. And possibly others. The accounts vary. They lured Shorty into a car. Told him they were going for a drive. Going to look at some car parts someone was selling. Something innocent. Shorty trusted them. He'd known them for months. Worked alongside them. He got in the car. They drove into the hills behind Spawn Ranch. Into the remote areas where the caves and old mines were. The area was crisscrossed with dirt roads. Old fire roads. Paths that led nowhere. And there, far from any witness, they attacked him. The details are horrific. Tex stabbed him. Multiple times. Steve held him down. Bruce helped. Shorty fought. He was strong. Experienced in physical confrontations from his stunt work. But he was outnumbered. And eventually, he stopped fighting. The testimony diverged on what happened next. Some family members who later talked to investigators claimed they dismembered Shorty's body. Cut it into pieces with knives and a machete they'd brought. To make it easier to hide. To scatter the parts so he could never be identified. Others denied this. Said the body was buried intact. That the dismemberment rumors were exaggerations. Attempts to make the family seem more monstrous than they were. But everyone agreed on one thing. Shorty was buried somewhere in those hills. Somewhere in the maze of canyons, caves, and old mining tunnels that surrounded Spawn Ranch. The problem was finding him. In 1970, after the family was arrested and the trials for the Tate LaBianca murders began, investigators started searching for Shorty. They had general areas from testimony. Family members who cooperated said the murder happened in the hills behind the ranch. But that covered miles of terrain. Rocky, difficult, filled with canyons and ridges. Thousands of places to hide a body. They brought in search teams, cadaver dogs, ground-penetrating radar when it became available. They searched for weeks, focused on areas where the terrain allowed for digging, where someone could bury a body. They dug in multiple locations based on tips and vague confessions, but the family members weren't exactly helpful with specifics. Some gave contradictory information, said it was near a rock that looked like a face, near a canyon with 3 oak trees. But every canyon had rocks. Many had oak trees. Some refused to talk at all, invoked their Fifth Amendment rights, stayed loyal to Manson even from prison. Others claimed they couldn't remember. It was dark when we did it. We were all high on mescaline. All the canyons looked the same out there. The searches turned up nothing. They found old garbage dumps, animal remains, abandoned equipment from the movie ranch, but no Shorty, and the case remained open. Shorty Shea was legally declared dead in 1972, but without a body, there was no closure. No murder charges related to his death could be fully prosecuted with the weight they deserved. The case haunted investigators. Years passed. The Manson trials concluded. Life sentences. Death sentences that were later commuted to life, when California temporarily abolished the death penalty. The family scattered. Some went to prison for their roles in various crimes. Others were never charged. They disappeared into society, changed their names, started over, and Shorty remained missing. In 1977, 8 years after Shorty disappeared, there was a break. Steve Grogan, Clem, one of the family members serving a life sentence, made a deal. He was young when the crimes happened, 19 years old, and his lawyers argued he'd been under Manson's psychological control, that he was a victim too. In a way, he offered information about Shorty Shea, said he'd show investigators where the body was buried, in exchange for parole consideration. Investigators were skeptical. They'd heard this before. Family members offering information that led nowhere, playing games, enjoying the attention. But they agreed to listen. Grogan led them back to the hills near Spawn Ranch. The ranch itself had burned down in a wildfire in 1970. Nothing left but charred foundations and twisted metal. The fake western town completely destroyed, reclaimed by fire and time. But the hills were the same. Rocky, wild, unchanged. Grogan walked them through the canyons. His hands were cuffed, 2 officers flanking him. He pointed to landmarks as they walked. A specific rock formation that jutted out like a shelf. A dry creek bed that flooded during rare rains. A cluster of gnarled oak trees growing at an angle from the hillside. "It's near here," he said. They searched the area he indicated. And in a shallow ravine, partially hidden by brush and decades of erosion, they found bones. Human bones. Partially buried under a few inches of dirt and rock. The burial had been shallow, hasty, and time had done its work. Animals had scattered some of the remains. Coyotes, foxes, but enough remained for identification. The bones were carefully excavated, photographed, cataloged. Forensic analysis confirmed it. Donald Shea. The skull showed evidence of blunt force trauma. The ribs showed knife marks, cut marks on the bone. He'd been stabbed repeatedly. The dismemberment rumors were false. The body was intact when buried, or had been. Animals and decomposition over 8 years had done the rest. But it wasn't cut into pieces by the family. Grogan's information was accurate. And as part of his deal, he was eventually paroled in 1985. The only Manson family member convicted of murder to ever be released. He disappeared into society, changed his name, started a family, lives quietly somewhere. The only one who got out. But the discovery of Shorty's body raised more questions than it answered. How many other bodies were out there? The family had been active for years, living in the hills, using the caves, moving around the backcountry. There were rumors of other victims, people who'd crossed Manson, people who'd tried to leave the family, people who knew too much, drifters who'd stayed at the ranch and then vanished. In the years since, investigators have continued to search periodically, especially after 1988, when Juan Flynn came forward. He'd been a ranch hand at Spawn Ranch during the family's time there, knew them well, saw things, and he told investigators there were more bodies buried in those hills. Maybe not dozens, But more than just Shorty. He claimed to have seen the family digging graves on multiple occasions, seen them drag bodies wrapped in tarps into the hills at night. But he'd been too afraid to come forward at the time. Afraid he'd be next. Afraid the family would come for him. Now, years later, with everyone in prison, he felt safe enough to talk. Search teams returned to the hills in the late 80s and early 90s, brought more sophisticated equipment, better ground-penetrating radar, more sensitive cadaver dogs, excavators to move earth when the radar showed anomalies. They searched dozens of sites, caves where the family had camped, mine shafts in the area, creek beds where bodies might have been dumped, old fire roads where someone could have dug quickly. Anywhere someone could hide a body in that rugged terrain. They found animal remains, old trash dumps from the movie ranch era, buried debris, cans and bottles, and old equipment. But no more confirmed human remains. At least not that were definitively connected to the family. The terrain itself worked against them. The hills around Spawn Ranch are honeycombed with caves, natural sandstone formations carved by erosion over millennia. Some are small alcoves, others are large chambers, and they connect in unpredictable ways. Side passages, dead ends, narrow crawls that open into larger spaces. Searching them all would take years. And old mining tunnels from the 1800s. Most have collapsed over time, sealed by rockfalls and settling earth. But some remain open. Vertical shafts that drop 30, 40 feet. Horizontal tunnels that extend into the hillside. Unstable. Dangerous. The risk of collapse is constant. Some of the caves go deep into the hillside, 30, 40 feet back into solid rock. Narrow passages. Low ceilings where you have to crawl. The air gets thin. The darkness absolute. Searching them all would be impossible. And dangerous. One investigator nearly died during the searches in 1989. He was searching a mine tunnel that extended into the hillside, following up on a tip that someone had seen the family near this specific tunnel. He was crawling through a narrow passage, maybe 2 feet high, using a flashlight to see, when he heard a sound. A cracking, like wood breaking, then felt dust falling on his bag. He stopped, listened. More cracking. The ceiling was giving way. He backed out as fast as he could, crawling backward, scraping his back on the low ceiling, his heart pounding. He made it out. 30 seconds later, the entire section he'd been in collapsed. The tunnel filled with rock and earth. Sealed. If he'd been 5 feet farther in, he'd have been buried alive. Crushed. And no one would have been able to get him out. The search was called off after that incident. Too dangerous. Not enough evidence to justify the risk of losing searchers. The cost in terms of personnel and resources was mounting, and they'd found nothing. To this day, investigators believe there may be more victims buried in those hills. The terrain is vast. The family was there for over a year, and they had plenty of opportunity, plenty of motive to eliminate problems, and plenty of hiding places. The caves and mines around Spawn Ranch remain. Most are on private property now. The land has been subdivided, houses built, but the backcountry is still wild, still remote, posted with no trespassing signs. But urban explorers still go, looking for the Manson caves, taking photos for Instagram, leaving graffiti, spray painting their names where the family once lived. Some claim to feel a presence in the caves, a darkness, an energy. Most dismiss it as imagination, the power of suggestion. But others swear the caves feel wrong, that something happened there, something that left a mark. Most explorers just find empty caves, graffiti from other visitors, helter-skelter spray painted on walls, beer cans, cigarette butts, the detritus of people looking for a thrill. But every so often, someone finds something. A piece of cloth buried in the dirt at the back of a cave. Bones that might be human, might be animal. They report it. Investigators check it out. And it's always nothing. Always animals. Deer. Coyotes. Always old. Decades old. But the possibility remains that somewhere in those hills, in a cave or mine shaft that hasn't been found in, there are more bodies, more victims, more secrets that the earth is keeping. And Manson, before he died in 2017, never told. He went to his grave keeping those secrets, enjoying the mystery, the power, the control, even from prison, even in death. The execution drop. Las Vegas, Nevada, 2007. Jared Whaley was 21 years old. Tall, athletic, charismatic. He wanted to make it as a club promoter in Las Vegas. It was the life he dreamed of. The clubs, the music, the money, the beautiful people, the connections. He'd moved to Vegas from California a year earlier. Started working at clubs on the Strip, handing out flyers, getting people to come to specific venues. If you brought a crowd, you got paid. If you brought the right crowd, attractive women, high rollers, people who spent money, you got paid well. Jared was good at it. He had the look, the personality. People liked him. He made friends easily, including friends you shouldn't make. He started hanging around with a group of guys who presented themselves as connected, as dangerous, as people you didn't cross. They weren't actual mobsters, weren't connected to organized crime in any real way, but they acted like it. They talked tough, wore expensive clothes they couldn't afford, carried weapons, sold drugs, got into fights at clubs, called themselves a crew. Not quite a gang, but trying to be. They wanted the reputation, the fear, the respect. And Jared wanted to be part of that world, wanted to be taken seriously, wanted to be seen as someone important, someone dangerous. But on July 4th, 2007, Jared disappeared. Independence Day. The city was crowded with tourists. Fireworks over the Strip. Parties everywhere. Jared had been at a house party in the northeast part of the city. Friends saw him there, drinking, doing cocaine. He seemed fine, normal. Then around midnight, he left with some members of the crew, got into a car with them. Several people saw him get in, saw the car drive away. That was the last time anyone saw Jared alive. His family reported him missing 2 days later when he didn't come home and didn't answer his phone. That wasn't like him. He always stayed in touch, called his mother regularly. The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department opened a missing persons investigation. They talked to Jared's friends, his roommate, his co-workers at the clubs. Everyone said the same thing. Jared had been at that party, then left with the crew. The detectives started looking into the crew, and the more they investigated, the more a pattern emerged. The leader was a man named Anthony Longo, 26 years old. Anthony had a criminal record: assault, drug possession, weapons charges. He'd done time in county jail. Short stints, nothing major. But he presented himself as a major player, as someone connected, as someone dangerous. The other main members were Jesse Duarte, Russell Dixon, and Michael Callahan, all in their mid-20s, all with records, all trying to be gangsters. Jared had been trying to impress them, trying to prove he belonged. But something went wrong. Detectives brought Anthony in for questioning. He came in voluntarily, sat down in the interview room, confident, relaxed. He denied everything. Said sure, Jared was at the party. Said yeah, they hung out. But Jared left on his own. Said he didn't know where Jared went after that. Said he hadn't seen him since. Detectives pressed him. Multiple witnesses saw Jared get into your car. We know you drove away together. Anthony shrugged. Maybe he got in the car. Maybe we gave him a ride somewhere. I don't remember. It was a party. Everyone was fucked up. Where did you take him? I don't remember taking him anywhere. Like I said, I think he left on his own. His story had holes. Witnesses contradicted him. But without a body, without physical evidence, they couldn't charge him. They had to let him go. Days turned into weeks. The investigation continued. Phone records were subpoenaed. Anthony's phone showed calls throughout the night of July 4th. Calls to Jesse, to Russell, to Michael. Short calls, lasting seconds, like check-ins, like coordination. And cell tower data showed Anthony's phone moving north, out of the city, into the desert, toward an area called Lone Mountain. He was there for approximately 2 hours, between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. Then the phone moved back south, back into the city. Detectives knew Jared was dead. They suspected Anthony and his crew were involved. But without a body, they couldn't prove murder. They kept investigating, interviewing people, building their case, waiting for a break. And then in August, 6 weeks after Jared disappeared, hikers made a discovery. They were a couple in their 30s, experienced hikers. They'd driven out to the Lone Mountain area to explore. It's rugged terrain, rocky hills rising out of the desert floor, creosote bushes, chala cactus, and old mining claims from the early 1900s. The area had been prospected extensively. Gold, silver. Most of the claims yielded nothing. But the mines remained. Vertical shafts, horizontal tunnels, abandoned, unmarked, dangerous. The hikers were following a dry wash when they noticed an opening in the rocks. A mine shaft, vertical, maybe 4 feet in diameter. The opening was partially obscured by brush. You'd walk right past it if you weren't looking. They walked over to look. Curious. One of them picked up a rock, just to hear it hit bottom. A game hikers play. Dropped it into the shaft. They listened. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. 4. Then a distant thud. Muffled. Jesus, that's deep, the man said. His wife pulled out her phone, turned on the flashlight, shined it down. The beam barely penetrated. The shaft was too deep. But at the edge of the light, maybe 50 feet down, they saw something. Something that didn't look like rock. Something pale, light-colored, like fabric. Do you see that? She asked. What is it? I don't know, but I don't think it's a rock. They looked at each other, thinking the same thing. They called 911, reported what they'd found, gave their location. Metro Police responded. A search and rescue team was dispatched. They arrived within an hour, set up equipment around the shaft. Ropes, harnesses, anchor points secured to rocks. They lowered a camera first, a waterproof camera attached to a cable, fed it down slowly. The shaft dropped straight down. The walls were hand-hewn, pick marks visible in the stone. At 57 feet, the camera reached the bottom, and the feed showed what the hikers had seen. A body, face down. They'd found Jared Whaley. A recovery team member was lowered down, secured Jared's body. They hoisted him up. It took over an hour. The body was in bad condition. 6 weeks in the desert heat. Even underground, the decomposition was advanced. But the autopsy revealed the cause of death. Gunshot wounds. Multiple. 2 in the chest. 1 in the head. Close range. The head wound was execution style. Behind the right ear. Stippling around the wound indicated the gun was pressed directly against his skin. He'd been executed, then thrown down the shaft. The coroner determined he was already dead when he fell. The fall didn't kill him. The bullets did. The mine shaft was just disposal. Gravity doing the burial. The investigation went into high gear. Detectives obtained warrants, financial records, surveillance footage from gas stations and convenience stores along the route to Lone Mountain, and phone records. The records were damning. Anthony's phone pinged off cell towers, creating a trail. He'd left the party around midnight, driven north on Route 93, toward Lone Mountain. His phone was in that area for approximately 2 hours, right near where Jared's body was found in. Then it moved back south, back into Vegas. Jesse's phone showed the same pattern. Russell's phone showed the same pattern. They'd all been there. Police arrested Anthony Longo, Jesse Duarte, Russell Dixon, and Michael Callahan. All 4 were charged with first-degree murder, kidnapping, conspiracy. The interrogations began. At first, all 4 denied everything. Didn't know anything. Weren't involved. Hadn't seen Jared after the party. But detectives worked them. Standard interrogation techniques. Playing them against each other. Showing each suspect statements from the others. Jesse's talking. Says it was all your idea, Anthony. Anthony's saying you pulled the trigger, Russell. Russell says you're the one who knew about the mine shaft. The pressure worked. Jesse broke first. He asked for a lawyer, negotiated a plea deal. In exchange for testimony, reduced charges. He'd tell them everything. And he did. It wasn't supposed to happen, he said. At least not the way it did. Jared had been running his mouth. At the party, and before. Claiming he was tougher than he was. Claiming connections he didn't have. Saying he knew people. Saying he'd done things. Anthony thought Jared was a problem. Thought he talked too much. Thought he'd eventually talk to the wrong people. Maybe the police. Jared knew about their drug dealing. The robberies they pulled. The guns they had. He was a liability. So Anthony made a decision. Jared had to go. They lured him to a car after the party. Told him they were going to another party. Somewhere in the desert. A rave. Jared believed them. Trusted them. He got in Anthony's car. Jesse and Russell were already inside. Michael followed in another vehicle. They drove north. Into the desert. Jared was in the back seat. Between Jesse and Russell. He was drunk. High. He didn't realize what was happening until it was too late. They drove for 30 minutes. 40. Until they were far from the city. Far from any lights. Far from any witnesses. They stopped near the mine shaft. Anthony had been there before. Had used it before. For disposal. The area was dark. No moon. Just the headlights cutting through the desert. Anthony told Jared to get out. Said he wanted to show him something. Jared got out. Still not understanding. They walked toward the shaft. It was maybe 20 yards from where they'd parked. Anthony led. Jared followed. Jesse and Russell flanked him. When they reached the edge of the shaft, Anthony told Jared to kneel. What? Why? Just do it. And maybe Jared understood then. Maybe he realized. He tried to run. But Russell grabbed him. Pushed him down. Jared fell to his knees at the edge of the shaft. Bleeding. Wait. Please, what the hell, man? What did I do? Anthony pulled out a gun. A 9mm. And shot him. Once in the chest. Jared fell forward. Gasping. Finish it, Anthony said to Russell. Russell pulled out his own gun. And shot Jared twice more. Once in the chest. Once in the head. Jared stopped moving. But he didn't fall into the shaft. He fell onto the ground next to it. So they had to move him. Drag him the few feet to the edge. Anthony and Jesse grabbed his arms. Russell grabbed his legs. They swung him once. Twice. 3 times. And let go. Jared's body tumbled over the edge. They listened. Heard him hit the bottom. A distant, muffled sound. Then silence. They stood there for a moment. Then got back in the cars. Drove back to Vegas. Went to a club on the Strip. Drank. Partied. Like nothing happened. Jesse's testimony was detailed. Corroborated by physical evidence. The bullets. The phone records. The location. Russell and Michael's lawyers fought. Argued the confession was coerced. That Jesse was lying to save himself. But the evidence supported Jesse's story. At trial, the prosecution laid it out. The phone records. The timeline. The witness testimony from the party. Jesse's confession. The physical evidence. Anthony Longo was convicted of first-degree murder. Kidnapping. Conspiracy. Sentenced to life, without the possibility of parole. Russell Dixon was also convicted. Life with the possibility of parole after 20 years. Jesse Duarte, as part of his plea deal, received 20 years. Eligible for parole after serving 15. Michael Callahan was acquitted. His lawyer successfully argued he wasn't at the scene, that he was just associated with the group, but wasn't involved in the actual murder. The jury believed it. He walked free. The Jared Whaley case highlighted something law enforcement in Las Vegas already knew. The desert is full of bodies. Old mine shafts. Abandoned wells. Ravines. Remote areas where no one goes. The perfect place to dump evidence. To make someone disappear. The Bureau of Land Management estimates there are over 500,000 abandoned mines in the United States. Nevada alone has tens of thousands. Clark County, where Las Vegas sits, has thousands. Most are unmarked, not on any official registry, just holes in the ground that have been there for over 100 years. Forgotten. Waiting. How many contain bodies? No one knows. Every few years, someone stumbles on remains. A hiker, a camper, an off-road enthusiast. Bones at the bottom of a shaft. Clothing. Personal effects. Sometimes they're identified through dental records or DNA. Missing persons cases closed decades later. Sometimes they're not. Just unknown remains. Buried in the desert. Forgotten. The Jared Whaley case was solved because hikers happened to look down the right mine shaft at the right time. If they'd been 100 yards in a different direction, if they'd taken a different trail, if they hadn't stopped to look, Jared might still be down there, undiscovered. His family still searching, still hoping, and Anthony Longo still walking free. The Headless Searchers. Superstition Mountains, Arizona, east of Phoenix, rising from the desert floor like jagged teeth. The Superstition Mountains. 43 square miles of rugged volcanic terrain. Sharp peaks. Deep canyons. Cliff faces that seem to cut the sky. The Apache called them sacred. A place of power. A place to avoid. The legends say there's gold in these mountains. A lost mine. The richest gold deposit ever found in North America. Worth hundreds of millions. Maybe billions. The Lost Dutchman's Mine. Named after a German immigrant, Jacob Waltz, who allegedly found it in the 1870s. The story goes that Waltz worked a mine in Mexico, then found an even richer deposit in the Superstitions. He'd disappear into the mountains for weeks at a time, come back with gold. High-grade ore. Incredibly pure. Worth a fortune. He'd sell it in Phoenix. Buy supplies. Then disappear into the mountains again. But he never told anyone where the mine was. Never filed a claim. Never marked it on a map. He kept it secret. And when people followed him, they'd lose his trail in the maze of canyons. When people asked, he'd smile and say nothing. He died in 1891. Pneumonia. On his deathbed, he supposedly told a friend, Julia Thomas, vague directions. The mine is in the mountains, near a rock formation that looks like a sombrero. There's a tunnel under a ledge. But the directions were too vague. Julia searched. Never found it. And the secret died with Waltz. Or did it? Because ever since, people have searched. Thousands of them. Prospectors with metal detectors. Treasure hunters with maps they bought off the internet. Adventurers looking for fame. Historians trying to solve the mystery. Some spend weekends searching. Some spend years. Some spend their entire lives. Obsessed. Consumed by the idea that they'll be the one to find it. That they'll be rich. Famous. The one who solved the greatest treasure mystery in American history. And some never come back. The Superstition Mountains are dangerous. Summer temperatures regularly exceed 115 degrees. The rock absorbs the heat and radiates it back, like walking in an oven. No water. No natural springs. No shade. And no cell service. The terrain is treacherous. Loose rock. Sheer cliffs. Flash flood zones that can fill with water in minutes during monsoon season. People die there. A lot of people. The Pinal County Sheriff's Office estimates that hundreds of people have died in the Superstitions over the past century. Some from exposure, dehydration, heat stroke. Some from falls, slipping on loose rock, tumbling down cliffs. Some from getting lost, wandering in circles until they collapse. But what makes the Superstitions truly disturbing isn't just the number of deaths. It's how people die, and who dies. In June 1931, a man named Adolf Ruth went into the Superstition Mountains. He was 66 years old, a veteran, an experienced outdoorsman. He'd spent years researching the Lost Dutchman, reading historical accounts, studying maps. He told people he had a map, a genuine map showing the location of the mine. He said a friend of Jacob Waltz had drawn it years ago. He was confident, excited, told his family he'd be back in a few weeks. Rich. He hired a guide to take him into the mountains, dropped him off at a trailhead near a formation called Weaver's Needle, a tall spire of rock that's a landmark in the range. Adolf said he'd hike in, find the mine, and hike back out in 2 weeks. The guide left. Adolf walked into the mountains, and he never came back. When he didn't return, searchers went looking. They found his camp after a few days. His tent was still set up. His supplies were there. Food, water, his sleeping bag. But no Adolf. They expanded the search. Days turned into weeks. No sign of him. In December, 6 months later, his skull was found. Just his skull. Lying in a remote canyon called West Boulder Canyon, miles from where his camp was. 2 bullet holes. One entering the left temple. One exiting the right side. He'd been shot. Executed. The rest of his body was found months later. In February 1932. Over a mile away from where the skull was found. Up a different canyon. The bones were scattered. Picked clean by animals. But the skull had been separate. Placed deliberately. Like a message. Like a warning. Investigators ruled it a homicide. But no suspect was ever identified. No motive established beyond the obvious. Someone didn't want Adolf finding that mine. Or Adolf found something he shouldn't have. And paid the price. The case was never solved. In 1949, another treasure hunter named James Cravey went into the superstitions. He had maps. Equipment. Supplies for a month-long expedition. He set up camp in a remote canyon. His headless body was found months later. Decomposed. Scattered by animals. His head was never recovered. Never found. Just gone. In 1952, 2 men from California, Joseph Kelly and his friend, drove to Arizona to search for the lost Dutchman. They were experienced hikers. They had maps. They told people they'd be back in a week. They never came back. Searchers found skeletal remains months later. Scattered across a canyon. Animals had done their work. Identification through dental records. The skulls were intact this time. But the placement of the bodies was strange. They were miles apart. In different canyons. As if they'd been separated. Or killed in different locations. In 1959, a man named Stanley Fernandez was found in the superstitions. Shot in the stomach. He was still alive when hikers found him. Barely. He died before they could get him out. He'd been searching for the mine. Told people he was close. Thought he'd found the location. Someone shot him and left him to die. In 1960, 3 men from New York disappeared. They'd come to Arizona specifically to search for the lost Dutchman. Rented a car. Bought supplies. Drove to the mountains. Partial remains were found months later. Scattered. Incomplete. The list goes on. 1973. A treasure hunter found dead. Cause of death, undetermined. 1984. A hiker found at the bottom of a cliff. Blunt force trauma. Could have been a fall. Could have been pushed. 2004. A prospector found shot. 9mm. No weapon recovered. 2011. A body found in a remote canyon. Decomposed beyond recognition. And many of the violent deaths have something in common. The victims were searching for the lost Dutchman. And many were found decapitated. Or with their heads missing. Or with their heads placed away from their bodies. It's a pattern. And it's disturbing. What's happening in the superstitions? There are theories. One theory is the curse. That the mine is protected by something supernatural. By the spirits of Apache warriors who died defending the sacred mountains. By the ghost of Jacob Waltz himself, guarding his treasure from beyond the grave. By something dark that lives in the mountains. People who believe in the curse point to the pattern. The number of deaths. The violence. The disappearances. They say the mountains don't want to be searched. Don't want their secrets revealed. But investigators have a more practical theory. Modern claim jumpers. The area is remote. Difficult to patrol. Perfect for illegal activity. Drug smugglers have been using the superstitions for decades. Mexican cartels move product north through Arizona. The mountains provide cover. Drop-off points. Stash locations. Caves where drugs can be hidden. Routes that avoid border patrol. And they don't like visitors. Don't like hikers stumbling onto their operations. If a prospector wanders into the wrong canyon at the wrong time, sees something they shouldn't, they become a liability. And liabilities get eliminated. The decapitations? A cartel signature. A message. A warning to others. This is what happens when you come here. Stay out. Some bodies are never found. Just missing person reports filed with the sheriff's office. Someone went into the superstitions. Never came back. Search teams look. Sometimes for weeks. Helicopters. Ground teams. Volunteers. But the terrain is vast. 43 square miles. Thousands of canyons. Caves. Mine shafts. And someone who doesn't want to be found. Or someone who's been buried. Or dropped down a mine shaft. They're gone. In 2011, a man named Jesse Kappan went into the Superstition Mountains. He was from Utah. 35 years old. Obsessed with the lost Dutchman. He'd spent years researching. Reading books. Studying historical accounts. Comparing maps. He told his girlfriend he'd found new information. A clue that others had missed. He was going to search a specific area. Near Weaver's Needle. He'd be back in a few days. He packed his gear. Drove to Arizona. And walked into the mountains. He never came back. His girlfriend reported him missing. A massive search was launched. Pinal County Sheriff's Office. Search and rescue volunteers. The Arizona Department of Public Safety sent helicopters. They searched for 3 weeks. Covered hundreds of square miles. Found nothing. No trace. No clues. No sign of Jesse. The case went cold. 3 years later, in November 2012, hikers found skeletal remains in a remote canyon. Far from any trail. In an area searchers hadn't reached in 2011. The remains were on a steep slope, partially buried by erosion. DNA analysis confirmed it was Jesse Kappan. The autopsy showed he'd fallen. Probably slipped on loose rock. Fell 30 or 40 feet. Broke his leg. Multiple fractures. He couldn't walk. Couldn't climb. He was trapped on that slope. And he'd died there. Alone. From exposure. Dehydration. But here's what's strange. The location where he was found was miles from where he'd told his girlfriend he was going. He'd planned to search near Weaver's Needle. But his body was found in a completely different area. Why? Had he gotten lost? Changed his plans? And his remains were scattered. Not just by animals. The skull was found separate from the body. 50 feet away. Down the slope. Had it rolled? Or been moved? The medical examiner ruled the death accidental. But some investigators aren't convinced. The pattern is too familiar. Another searcher. Another missing head. Another body in the superstitions. The Pinal County Sheriff's Office has a file. A thick file. Cases dating back decades. Murders. Missing persons. Unexplained deaths. All in the superstitions. All involving people searching for the lost Dutchman. They warn people. Signs at every trailhead. Dangerous terrain. Bring water. Tell someone where you're going. Stay on marked trails. But people don't listen. The lure of the gold is too strong. The idea that maybe, just maybe, they'll be the one to find it. That the lost Dutchman is real. That Jacob Waltz wasn't lying. That somewhere in those mountains there's a tunnel filled with gold. Waiting. So they go. Into the canyons. Into the caves. Into the old mine shafts that dot the mountains. Shafts dug by prospectors 150 years ago. Abandoned. Unmarked. Vertical drops into darkness. And sometimes they come back. With stories of the heat. The difficulty. The beauty of the mountains. And sometimes they don't. And sometimes, months or years later, someone finds what's left. Bones bleached white by the sun. Scattered across a canyon floor. The skull was found separate from the body. 50 feet away. Down the slope. Had it rolled? Or been moved? The medical examiner ruled the death accidental. But some investigators aren't convinced. The pattern is too familiar. Another searcher. Another missing head. Another body in the superstitions. The Pinal County Sheriff's Office has a file. A thick file. Cases dating back decades. Murders. Missing persons. Unexplained deaths. All in the superstitions. All involving people searching for the lost Dutchman. They warn people. Signs at every trailhead. Dangerous terrain. Bring water. Tell someone where you're going. Stay on marked trails. But people don't listen. The lure of the gold is too strong. The idea that maybe, just maybe, they'll be the one to find it, that the lost Dutchman is real, that Jacob Waltz wasn't lying, that somewhere in those mountains, there's a tunnel filled with gold, waiting. So they go. Into the canyons, into the caves, into the old mine shafts that dot the mountains. Shafts dug by prospectors 150 years ago. Abandoned. Unmarked. Vertical drops into darkness. And sometimes they come back with stories of the heat, the difficulty, the beauty of the mountains. And sometimes they don't. And sometimes, months or years later, someone finds what's left. Bones bleached white by the sun, scattered across a canyon floor. A skull with bullet holes. Another victim of the superstitions. Another headless searcher. The Environmental Trap. Death Valley, California. July 1996. A family from Germany is visiting the United States. The Egon family. Egbert, the father, 53 years old. Cornelia, the mother, 48. Their 2 sons. Georg, 14. Sabine, 11. They're tourists. On vacation. Seeing the American West. 2 weeks traveling through California, Nevada, and Arizona. The Grand Canyon. Las Vegas with its neon lights and casinos. The Hoover Dam. And now Death Valley. The hottest place on earth. They rent a minivan. A Plymouth Voyager. White. Standard tourist vehicle. And they drive into Death Valley National Park. It's July. Mid-July. The peak of summer. 122 degrees Fahrenheit in the shade. But they're from Germany. From a temperate climate. They've never experienced heat like this. It doesn't feel real. Doesn't feel dangerous. It just feels hot. Uncomfortable. But manageable. They don't understand that this heat kills. That it's not just uncomfortable. It's lethal. They decide to explore beyond the main tourist areas. The guidebooks mention old mining areas. Ghost towns. Abandoned equipment from the borax mining days and the gold rush. It sounds interesting. Historical. Off the beaten path. The kind of thing you can't see in Germany. They see a dirt road leading off the main highway. A rough track disappearing into the desert. It's not marked on their map. No signs. No warnings. Just a road that looks like it might lead somewhere interesting. They take it. The road is rough. Washboard surface. The minivan bounces violently over ruts and embedded rocks. But they keep going. It feels like an adventure. Deeper into the desert. Away from the paved roads. Away from other tourists. Away from help. After several miles, the road becomes worse. Barely a road anymore. Just tire tracks in the sand. They consider turning back. But they've come this far. They keep going. And then, they enter a dry wash. A natural channel, where water flows during the rare desert rains. But it hasn't rained here in months. Years. The wash is filled with soft, fine sand. The minivan's front tires sink immediately. Egbert tries to drive through. Accelerates. But the tires just spin. Dig deeper. The sand sprays out behind them. The minivan settles lower. The undercarriage grounds out. They're stuck. High-centered on sand. The wheels spinning uselessly in the air. Egbert gets out. The heat hits him like a physical force. Like opening an oven door and putting your face directly in front of it. He tries to dig around the tires. Using his hands. A piece of cardboard from the back of the minivan. His sons help. But the sand is like liquid. It just falls back. Fills in as fast as they dig. They try putting brush under the tires for traction. Nothing works. They're trapped. It's approximately 3 p.m. The hottest part of the day. They're miles from the main road. 10 miles. Maybe more. They've been driving for over an hour. No cell service. They tried their phones. No signal. They didn't tell anyone at the hotel where they were going. Didn't file a plan with park rangers. They're on their own. They get back in the minivan. Turn on the engine. Run the air conditioning. and discuss what to do. They have water, but not much. Maybe 2 liters total. A couple of bottles. They'd planned to be back by dinner. Didn't think they'd need more. For 4 people in 120-degree heat, 2 liters is nothing. A person can lose a liter per hour through sweat in conditions like this. They have maybe 2 hours of water. Maybe. They decide to wait. Maybe someone will come. Another tourist. A ranger. They wait for an hour. The sun beating down. The air conditioning struggling. No one comes. They decide they have to walk out. Try to find help. They get out of the minivan. Take the water. And make a decision that will kill them. Instead of walking back the way they came, following the dirt road back toward the highway, they walk in a different direction. Looking for shade. Looking for shelter from the brutal sun. Egbert sees rock formations in the distance. Canyons. Rocky walls that will provide shade. It looks closer than the road back. It looks cooler. Safer. They head toward it. The family starts walking toward the rocks. The sun is relentless. The ground radiates heat. The air shimmers. Within minutes, they're drenched in sweat. Their bodies desperately trying to cool themselves. But in humidity this low, the sweat evaporates instantly, taking precious moisture from their bodies. After 30 minutes of walking, they reach the canyon. The shade feels like salvation. 20 degrees cooler in the shadow of the rock walls. They rest. Drink some water. Small sips. They're already down to 1 bottle. What they don't realize is that this canyon doesn't lead anywhere. It's not a pass through the mountains. It's a dead end. A box canyon. And it's taking them farther from the road. Farther from any chance of being found. But they don't know that. They just know the shade feels better. They follow the canyon, thinking maybe it will lead to a road. To a ranger station. To something. The canyon winds between rock walls. Narrows. Widens. They climb over boulders. Squeeze through tight passages. The boys are struggling. Sabine is only 11. The heat is overwhelming even in the shade. They stop frequently. Rest. Drink the last of the water. Within 2 hours, they're out of water completely. And they're lost. The canyon has branched. They've taken turns they can't remember. They can't see any landmarks. Just rock walls all around them. The dehydration sets in quickly. In heat like this, your body loses water faster than you can imagine. And they started with almost nothing. The symptoms come fast. Thirst. Intense, overwhelming thirst. Dry mouth. Dizziness. Confusion. Your body starts shutting down non-essential functions. Conserving water for vital organs. Your heart. Your brain. They keep walking. Looking for a way out. Looking for water. Any water. But there's nothing. Just rock. Sand. Endless desert. Cornelia and the boys are falling behind. They can't keep up. Egbert tries to encourage them. Just a little farther. We'll find help. But he doesn't believe it anymore. He's starting to realize they're in serious trouble. They find a rock overhang. A small alcove carved into the canyon wall. It provides shade. Relief from the direct sun. Cornelia and Sabine collapse there. They can't go any farther. Sabine is crying. Begging for water. Mama, I'm so thirsty. Please, just a little water. But there's no water. Cornelia holds him. Tries to comfort him. Tells him it will be okay. But she knows it won't. Egbert and Jord decide to continue. To try to find help. To find water. Anything. They leave Cornelia and Sabine in the shade. Promise to come back. Promise to bring help. They stumble forward. But they're disoriented now. Severely dehydrated. The confusion is overwhelming. They're walking in circles. Following canyons that lead back to where they started. Climbing over the same boulders twice without realizing it. Jord collapses first. Maybe a mile from where they left Cornelia and Sabine. He just stops. Sits down. Can't get back up. Egbert tries to help him. Tries to pull him to his feet. But Jord is done. His body has nothing left. Egbert sits down next to him. He doesn't have the strength to continue alone. They die there. Together. Father and son. in the shade of a rock wall, miles from anyone. Back at the rock overhang, Cornelia and Sabine wait, hoping, praying, but no one comes. The sun moves across the sky. The shade shifts. They try to move with it, stay in the shadow, but they're too weak. Eventually, they stop moving. Just lie there, in the heat, waiting. The autopsy reports would later confirm what investigators suspected. All four died from dehydration and hyperthermia. Your body temperature rises. Your organs fail. Your brain swells. It's not a peaceful death. But eventually, you lose consciousness. And then, it's over. The environment killed them. Not violence. Not foul play. Not a crime. Just heat. And bad decisions. And a landscape that doesn't forgive mistakes. For years, this was a mystery. The Death Valley Germans. The case that haunted the National Park Service. The minivan was found 3 weeks later, July 23rd. Park rangers on routine patrol spotted it, abandoned in the wash, exactly where the family had left it. Keys in the ignition, doors unlocked, windows down. The contents of the van were still there. Luggage, clothes, a camera with film inside, but no sign of the family. No bodies, no note, no clue where they'd gone. Search teams were dispatched immediately. Park rangers, search and rescue volunteers from across California, helicopters from the Air National Guard. They searched for 3 weeks, covered hundreds of square miles, flying grid patterns, walking canyons, checking every mine, shaft, and cave within 10 miles. But Death Valley is vast, over 3 million acres, the largest national park in the contiguous United States. And in summer, the heat limits search operations to early morning, a few hours after sunrise before it becomes too dangerous for searchers. The search was eventually called off in mid-August. The family was declared missing, presumed dead. But where were the bodies? The case haunted everyone involved. It haunted the rangers who'd searched. It haunted the family back in Germany. Egbert's brother spent years trying to find answers. Hired private investigators. Contacted psychics. Offered rewards. But nothing. No closure. No answers. Just 4 people who drove into the desert and vanished. In 2009, 13 years later, a man named Tom Mahood became interested in the case. He wasn't law enforcement. Not a park ranger. Not a professional investigator. Just a private citizen. An engineer by training. With a background in science and analytical problem solving. He lived in California. Had hiked Death Valley many times. He read about the case online, on a forum dedicated to missing persons in national parks. The mystery intrigued him. The lack of resolution bothered him. How could 4 people just disappear? He started researching, reading every report he could find, every witness statement, every piece of information available. News articles from 1996, Park Service reports. He studied maps, topographic maps, geological surveys, satellite imagery from Google Earth. He analyzed the terrain, where the minivan was found, what roads made sense from that location, where someone might walk looking for help. He ruled out the obvious. They didn't walk back on the road. The search teams had covered that thoroughly. They didn't stay near the van. Searchers had covered that area extensively. So where did they go? Tom developed a theory. He believed they'd walk toward the rock formations, toward the canyons, looking for shade. And once in the canyons, they'd gotten lost, disoriented, walked deeper instead of finding their way out. He identified a specific canyon system, a series of interconnected canyons that branched and twisted. That would have looked promising, would have offered shade, but ultimately led nowhere. He started searching, on his own, at his own expense, taking vacation days, driving the 300 miles from his home to Death Valley. He'd hike into remote canyons, checking areas that the original search teams might have missed, areas that were off the expected routes. In October 2009, on his 4th expedition, he found the first clue, a child's shoe, small, a boy's sneaker, faded by 13 years of sun, the colors bleached almost white, half buried in sand under a creosote bush in a side canyon. Tom's heart raced. He marked the GPS coordinates, photographed the shoe from multiple angles, and expanded his search in that area. Over the next several hours, he found more. A water bottle, the plastic warped and brittle from years of UV exposure. The label, completely faded. Clothing fragments, scraps of fabric caught on rocks. Then, bones. Human bones. A femur partially buried in sand. A skull, scattered by animals over 13 years. Coyotes, ravens, kit foxes. But enough remained to tell the story. Tom contacted the National Park Service immediately. Rangers and forensic recovery teams were dispatched. Over the next week, they found the remains of all 4 family members. Cornelia and Sabine were found together under the rock overhang. They'd stayed together, mother and son. The water bottles near them suggested they'd tried to ration what little they had. Tried to survive. Waited for help that never came. Egbert and Jorg were found approximately a mile away, closer to where Tom had found the first shoe. They'd collapsed in the canyon, unable to continue. Their remains were closer together, father and son. The forensic analysis confirmed the timeline. They'd been walking for hours, probably 6 or 7 hours after leaving the van. They'd covered approximately 4 miles, but in the wrong direction. Away from the road, away from help, deeper into the wilderness. If they'd walked back the way they came, following the road, they'd have reached the highway. Would have been seen by passing cars. Would have survived. But they chose the canyons. And the canyons killed them. Tom Mahood's work was extraordinary. He'd solved a 13-year-old case, using nothing but logic, research, and determination. He'd given the family closure, given them a place to mourn. The German government awarded him a medal. The family thanked him, said they could finally say goodbye. But the case also illustrates how dangerous the environment is. How the mines and canyons aren't just historical curiosities. They're traps. Death Valley is full of abandoned mines. Hundreds of them, scattered across the valley and surrounding mountains. Old prospects from the borax mining days. The gold rush. Silver. Most are unmarked. Just holes in the ground. Shafts. Tunnels. And they're dangerous. Not just because you can fall in, but because they look like shelter. When you're dying of heat, when your body is shutting down, when you're desperate for relief, a cool, dark mine shaft looks like salvation. You see the opening. Feel the cool air rising from deep underground. 40 degrees cooler than the surface. And you go inside. Get out of the sun. But mines are traps. They go deep, branch in unexpected directions. Side tunnels. Vertical shafts. You can get lost. Turned around in the darkness. Your phone flashlight dies. And you're trapped. And if you collapse inside, no one will ever find you. The mine becomes your tomb. The Vibration. Nevada Desert. 2014. Kenny Veach was a hiker. 47 years old. Vibrante. Experienced. He'd spent years exploring the deserts around Las Vegas. The mountains. The valleys. The canyons. The old mining areas that dotted the landscape. He loved the solitude. The challenge. The discovery of places few people ever saw. And he documented his hikes on YouTube. His channel was called Snake Bit Mickey. Videos of remote locations. Ghost towns with buildings collapsing into dust. Abandoned mines with rusted equipment. Scenic views from mountain peaks. His production was simple. Handheld camera. Natural sound. No music. No editing tricks. Just Kenny walking through the desert, pointing out interesting things. Talking to the camera like he was talking to a friend. His channel wasn't huge. A few thousand subscribers. But the people who watched were dedicated. Fellow hikers. Desert enthusiasts. People who appreciated the wilderness and the honesty of his content. In the summer of 2014, Kenny posted a comment on one of his videos. Someone had asked if he'd ever found anything strange out in the desert. Kenny replied. He said he'd found a cave near Area 51. A cave shaped like an M. Perfect M shape in the rock. And when he approached the entrance, something weird happened. His body started to vibrate. Not from sound. He couldn't hear anything unusual. Not from wind. The air was still. Just a vibration he could feel. In his bones. In his chest. Like standing next to a large transformer. Or generator. But there was nothing there. No equipment. No visible source. It made him uncomfortable. Made his skin crawl. Made him turn back before entering. He mentioned it casually. Almost as an aside. Didn't make a big deal of it. Just thought it was strange. But the comment section exploded. Hundreds of comments within days. People were intrigued. Fascinated. Demanding more information. Where is this cave? Can you show us on a map? You have to go back and film it. What do you think causes the vibration? Some were skeptical. That's not real. You're making it up for attention. Prove it or I don't believe you. Kenny responded to some comments. Said he wasn't sure he wanted to go back. Said the vibration had genuinely scared him. Said it felt wrong. Like a warning. But people kept pushing. Challenging him. You're scared of a cave. Come on, man. You've been in hundreds of caves. Go back and prove it. Show us, or admit you made it up. The pressure mounted. Kenny's reputation was on the line. He'd built his channel on authenticity. On showing real places. Real experiences. Now, people were calling him a liar. In October 2014, Kenny posted another comment. He said he was planning to go back. He'd find the M cave again. Film it this time. Show everyone he wasn't lying. He'd prove the vibration was real. In early November, Kenny started preparing. He told his girlfriend Sherian about the trip. Said he was going to search the area near Area 51. Near Nellis Air Force Base. The Sheep Mountain Range. He'd be looking for the cave. Might take him all day. But he'd be back by evening. Sherian was worried. She'd heard him talk about the vibration. Heard the fear in his voice when he described it. She asked him not to go. Why do you need to prove anything to strangers on the internet? But Kenny felt he had to. His integrity was being questioned. He had to show them. On November 10th, 2014, Kenny packed his gear. Camera with extra batteries. Water. 3 lighters. GPS device. Flashlight. Protein bars. Everything he normally took on a day hike. He kissed Sherian goodbye. Said he'd call her when he was on his way back. And he drove into the desert. That was the last time anyone saw Kenny Veach. When he didn't come home by evening, Sherian called his phone. No answer. Straight to voicemail. She waited, thinking maybe he'd lost track of time. Maybe his phone died. By midnight, she was panicking. She called the police. Reported him missing. Search and rescue teams were dispatched at first light. They had a general area from Kenny's YouTube videos. The regions he typically explored. The deserts around Nellis Air Force Base. Near Area 51-1. The Sheep Mountain Range. But the search area was massive. Hundreds of square miles. Rugged terrain. Mountains. Valleys. Countless canyons and washes. And thousands of old mine shafts. They searched for weeks. Park rangers. Volunteers from the hiking community. People who'd watched Kenny's videos and felt like they knew him. They walked the desert. Called his name. Checked mine shafts. Looked in caves. Flew helicopters in grid patterns. But they found nothing. No sign of Kenny. No footprints. No equipment. No body. Nothing. It was as if he'd vanished. In early December, about a month after Kenny disappeared, a group of hikers found something. A cell phone. Lying on the ground near the entrance to an old mine shaft. The screen was shattered. The case cracked. But it was clearly a phone. They picked it up. Checked the home screen. The wallpaper was a photo they recognized. From Kenny's YouTube channel. It was his phone. They immediately contacted authorities. Crime scene investigators arrived. Photographed everything. Documented the location. The phone was approximately 23 miles from where Kenny's truck had been found. In a remote area dotted with abandoned mines. No trails nearby. No roads within miles. The location was rugged. Difficult to reach. But there was no sign of Kenny. Just his phone. Investigators tried to extract data. See if there were photos in the memory. Video. Text messages. GPS coordinates, call logs, anything that might show where he'd been, what he'd found. But the phone was too damaged. Water had gotten inside, corroded the circuits. The battery was dead. The memory was corrupted. Data recovery specialists tried, but nothing could be salvaged. The phone was a dead end. The search continued into December. But as winter weather moved in, the search became more difficult. Snow in the higher elevations, cold temperatures, limited daylight. In January 2015, the official search was called off. Kenny Veach was declared missing, presumed dead, but his body was never found. The case remains unsolved. Kenny Veach is still missing, and the theories are endless. Some people believe Kenny found something he shouldn't have, that the M cave was the entrance to a classified military facility, an underground bunker connected to Area 51, that he entered the cave, saw something classified, and was disappeared by military security, that his body is in a classified grave somewhere on the base. This theory gained traction because of the location, near restricted military land, near areas where civilians aren't allowed, and because of the vibration. Some believe it was caused by underground machinery, ventilation systems for a secret facility, generators, something operating deep below the surface. Others believe the cave itself was dangerous, that the vibration was a natural phenomenon, geological, maybe a pocket of gas, methane, carbon dioxide, that the vibration was Kenny's body reacting to low oxygen levels, a warning his subconscious picked up, that he went back, ignored the warning, entered the cave, and was overcome by bad air, that his body is inside, deep in the cave system, lost in the dark. Some believe he simply had an accident, that the desert killed him, that he fell down a mine shaft, broke his leg, couldn't climb out, that he's at the bottom of one of the thousands of shafts in that area, that he dropped his phone near one shaft, but fell into another, and no one's found the right one yet. Sherian believes he's dead, has accepted that, but she wants closure, wants to know what happened, wants his body recovered so she can give him a proper burial, so she can say goodbye. Kenny's YouTube channel is still active. The videos are still there. You can watch them right now. See Kenny hiking through the desert, hear his voice, see the places he explored. And people still comment. Thousands of comments. Rip Kenny, I hope someone finds you. The M cave took you. You were brave to go back. Some claim to have searched for the cave themselves. Post videos of M-shaped caves they've found in the Sheep Range, near Nellis, in other parts of Nevada. But none feel right. None match Kenny's description. And none have the vibration. Some have suggested the vibration was infrasound, low-frequency sound below the range of human hearing, but felt in the body, causes feelings of unease, dread, panic, can be caused by wind moving through caves, certain geological formations. But no one's found a cave that produces this effect in the search area. The case has become a legend in the hiking and YouTube communities. A cautionary tale. A mystery. The man who went looking for a cave and never came back. Search teams still go out occasionally when someone reports finding something. A piece of equipment, clothing, bones. But it's never Kenny. Always someone else. Or an animal. The desert around Area 51 is unforgiving, full of abandoned mines, vertical shafts that drop 50, 60, 100 feet straight down, horizontal tunnels that extend deep into mountains. Most are unstable. The shoring has rotted. The ceilings are cracked, ready to collapse. If Kenny fell down one of those shafts, his body might never be found in. The openings are often hidden, covered by creosote bushes, camouflaged by rocks and sand. You could walk within 10 feet of one and never see it. Search teams could have passed right by it multiple times. And if he's inside a cave, deep inside a cave system, in a chamber beyond the main entrance, in a passage that requires crawling to access, the search would be nearly impossible. There are thousands of caves in Nevada. Most are unexplored. Most are unmapped. Many are dangerous. You could spend a lifetime searching and never find him. To this day, Kenny Veach remains missing. The M Cave has never been definitively located. His final video was never uploaded. And the desert keeps its secrets.